My stance on Rise of the Ronin has been that it's from a very capable studio and team that really knows combat. They know how to put together an interesting game, but their games have always had a lot of clunk. They always land at like the 8 out of 10 range, where there's a lot going for it, but also a lot of problems. They tend to feel pretty outdated, especially graphically. There's always some hiccups. So it's like lots of pros, lots of cons. It doesn't really do anything it does, or their games don't typically do anything like best of the best. They aren't like, okay, this is the best combat system releasing in this genre ever. And then, you know, they have other problems over here, but the combat is the best I've ever seen. They never really have that. It's always like, yeah, it's good, or it's pretty good, but it's never like the best, you know? And we've, of course, shocker, we've gotten some flack from their subreddit in some of these stream clips that I've done here on the stream discussing this, because we've seen a lot of like graphical issues in the preview trailers and things that they've released. We've seen a lot of issues with pop-in, a lot of issues with weird frame drops and stuttering. We've seen things where characters and NPCs in cities are walking like 6 inches above the ground because their feet aren't planted properly. Little things like that that really are not that big of a deal, but when they're omnipresent in a game, it will tear you out. And when you're paying $70 for a game, like, I think it's fair to bring up. I think it's fair to bring that up. You know, there's some people who will say, I don't care, I can tune it out. That's awesome. I'm glad you can tune it out. There are some games I'm able to tune out bugs and glitches and stuff for, and others I just can't. Or others, it's so disruptive, or the type of bugs that you encounter are so disruptive that you just can't really ignore it anymore. So it's going to be hard to tell until we get our hands on it if Rise of the Ronin is going to fit into that group. But my expectation has always been that this is going to be another game, just like all their other games, that's probably going to land in like the 8 out of 10 range, maybe pulling a little bit lower, maybe pulling a little bit higher, but it's like they're not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm not seeing anything in this gameplay that they've dropped so far where it's like, oh, this is going to be their magnum opus. This is going to be the thing that changes everything for them and breaks them into the mainstream. I've not seen any indication of that. But let's see. IGN previewed it.
Rise of the Ronin has been a blast so far. While not a graphical stunner like Ghost of Tsushima, I have been very impressed with the depth and sheer number of things to do. The story is compelling and gives you motivation to keep going to see what's next. There's plenty of gear you can acquire to make a stronger build. Characters you meet during your journey will join your crew and fight alongside you. There's a transmogrification system that lets you customize your appearance while also having the best gear possible equipped, and you can pet cats. But more
sold. I don't know why transmog is not like the standard. It should be, but for some reason with some of these games, it's like, yeah, in a year and a half, we'll bring transmog. It's like, it's kind of crucial. The one game that was like laughably terrible with its equipment was Hogwarts Legacy. So many of those outfits and everything looked so stupid. I'm glad there were like outfits and transmog options, but Jesus, that was terrible.
More importantly than all that, the core gameplay felt like a mix of the storytelling and exploration in Assassin's Creed 2 with a smidgen of Ninja Gaiden combat and a dash of Dark Souls difficulty. In other words, this recipe seems to be a perfect mix of gameplay ingredients that I've been loving. The main storyline of Rise of Ronin is all about a duo referred to as Blade Twins. In this case, it's believed that the duo are brother and sister who nearly suffered a terrible fate at a young age as their village burned to the ground. Instead, they were saved and recruited into the Veiled Edge as Blade Twins. Highly skilled with the sword, Blade Twins train and grow together as they master their skills. One of your first tests of skill has you infiltrating the ship of historical figure Matthew C. Perry to steal a secret message and assassinate Perry after doing so. This section does a good job of showing off a few stealth elements of Ronin, and also showcases combat with the footage PlayStation sent us to use for this preview. Combat will require precise time.
Wait, they provided gameplay? They weren't allowed to use their own captured gameplay? Let's continue.
For counters, and you'll need to pay close attention to your key gauge, which is basically a stamina meter. Getting hit too much while blocking will deplete your ki, but parrying your opponent or damaging them will result in a loss of their ki. Deplete all their ki, and they'll be left open for a devastating attack. The back and forth is a lot of fun in practice, but it's not easy to hit that perfect timing. Each encounter also allows you the opportunity to use stealth to infiltrate an area, and you can take out a few enemies without being seen. But in almost every situation, there will be higher powered foes that will require you to know the combat basics to defeat them and move forward. So while I built a character with a speech trait that opened up some unique dialogue options for me, there's no escaping those necessary combat beats that Ronin does quite well.
Oof.
The practice has paid off.
What? Don't move!
After this introductory section, Ronin really opens up. Our preview window promised 2 hours of playable content, but it turned out it was much more than that. We were given access to a large open world that included countryside towns and open fields, as well as city spaces with different types of missions located at each. In these sections, you can choose to take on story quests, side quests, customize your longhouse, or play minigames alongside other activities I probably missed. The provided footage we're allowed to use in this preview does a good job of showcasing a smattering of options available to players, but even this feels like it's just a glimpse into what's available, as I haven't even played some of what you're seeing yet. One notable mission in the footage was a story beat where I fought alongside the eccentric Ronin to gain his allegiance in one of the battle missions. In our preview, battle missions allow us to gain ally allegiance as part of core story missions. These are fun excursions that have bonus objectives like defeat 3 formidable foes, and will have an impact on the overall story you wind up experiencing. The main objective in this case was to defeat Gonzo and decide his fate before looting some forged documents that would complete the quest. I could have murdered him right there, but I instead chose to spare Gonzo. Fast forward to the open world section, and I meet a character in the middle of nowhere asking me to deal with a person who swindled him out of money. Who did it turn out to be? None other than Gonzo, who is getting into trouble again,
Gonzo.
even after I spared him earlier. This time I can finish him for real or have him join my crew. Had I chosen to kill him off, I would have been rewarded with some loot, but if I didn't, I got an extra helper to fight beside me in the open world. I'll take that over a few trinkets any day. And I discovered these different outcomes because I reloaded my save just to see what would happen had I chosen the other option. And while I had really been having fun with Rise of the Ronin up until this point, this was the moment that really solidified how much I was liking this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's super cool. I don't know why they haven't been focusing on stuff like that. That's cool.
Great combat, an intriguing story, decisions that matter, tons of stuff to do, and you can pet cats. I'm sold. My decision to spare Gonzo would pay off too, because in my upcoming story mission fight with Kira, I now had 3 allies going into battle instead of just 2. Myself, the eccentric Ronin, and Gonzo were an unstoppable trio ready to take Kira down. And that's just in the opening missions. I am tremendously excited to see who else I can recruit into my group. These were the core missions that we got to experience in our preview, but there's a lot more to do. While running in the open world, you might come upon towns that are overrun with troublemakers that you'll need to dispatch to restore order. There are mini games like the Gatling gun firearm range that was teased in the footage Sony sent over, or the glider mini games that challenge you to break all the targets floating in the sky. And while they didn't show much of it in the video that we're allowed to use, there's an entire gear system at play that encourages you to learn different weapons and use tools like the sub-weapon class that includes things like throwing stars, rifles, bows, and more for combat to get a leg up in battle. That's in addition to your main weapons, by the way, which have a smattering of samurai classics. Rise of the Ronin is poised to give players a lot to dive into, and while it doesn't quite live up to PlayStation's first-party open-world exclusives in the graphics department, the developers at Team Ninja have focused on what's important. An engaging story that has a great hook to keep you exploring, a fun gameplay system that will keep you striving to perfect your skills, and all of that is found alongside a smattering of fun activities to challenge yourself with. I can't wait to see how it all comes together when Ronin launches later this month. For more on the latest
Yeah, I mean, little things like the branching outcome with what's his name? I mean, that's super cool. Gonzo, that's super cool. There's things I feel like they haven't really discussed or expanded upon, or maybe I just have missed it, like discussions over the sort of party system where you can build out your followers and things by recruiting them. Little things like that seem interesting enough. But still, I mean, I think it's an interesting concept for a game. It's just my gut, which is generally right. Generally, I've been wrong plenty, but my gut says this ends up being much more niche than I think some people are expecting it to be. Ghost of Tsushima was able to appeal to a really, really wide audience. And I think that was partially, sure, because of the graphics. I mean, the game just looks stupid gorgeous. No matter what shot you looked at, it was freaking beautiful. And that in a TV commercial goes a long way. I mean, if you put a commercial even on YouTube and you see Ghost of Tsushima, you're going to be like, I kind of want to try that. That's beautiful. Graphics can do a lot to sell a game. However, I think it was also approachable in terms of gameplay at the same time. So even if you decided to try it and play it because it looked beautiful, you could get into it and still enjoy the gameplay and the combat and stuff. These games, and you know, the developers' previous games, have not exactly been the most approachable. They're pretty hardcore. I mean, even in their brief initial description, they outlined it as Dark Souls-like in terms of combat. So I think that there's the potential for this to be beloved by the people that like these kinds of games, but I just don't expect this to really blow into the mainstream. I would love to be wrong. I would love for there to be another kind of surprise blowout smash hit this year, but I guess time will tell. Time will tell. Souls-like combat ruined so many games. Well, it's not, shocker, it's not that easy to make really difficult combat feel fair at the same time. And generally, they've done a pretty good job with it. Team Ninja has. Their last game, what the crap was it called? Their last game, Wolong Fallen Dynasty. Yeah, that one, I felt there were times where like hitboxes weren't that tight. There were times when the like damage wouldn't go out properly. There was just like a lot of quirks with it. Both the Neo games I thought were great. Neo, I never remember having any issues with it, but I just think it's really, really tough to do it in a way that also appeals to the mainstream. And who knows, maybe this is their time to break free. Maybe this is when they break into the mainstream, but we will see. They were chasing Sekiro. I mean, maybe people are saying the same thing about this game now. Whether that's fair or not, I think it's too early to tell. But yeah, I mean, I've heard people say that they're chasing Sekiro popularity and they're just trying to make their own version of it. And maybe that's true. I just don't see a whole lot of stuff that's really, really unique about this game. It just seems like, yeah, so it's kind of similar to Ghost of Tsushima and then also these Soulsborne games like, you know, even Sekiro. But it's worse in a lot of ways. I'm just like, okay, where's the hook? Like, where's the thing that makes this super, super exceptional? And I'm still kind of waiting to see it. It could just end up being that 8 out of 10 game. And 8 out of 10 games certainly do have a place in the industry. I'm not saying there isn't a place for that. But I do think that sometimes, if expectations are out of whack, an 8 out of 10 can feel a lot worse than it actually is. Dragon's Dogma 2 is going to be the obvious choice for Souls fans. Well, I think the thing with Dragon's Dogma 2, I don't know if it appeals to Souls fans first, but I do think it appeals to Elden Ring fans. Because the idea is that it's got this big open world, it's all about exploration, and then there's big like boss fights and things with these dynamic encounters you can have against different monsters you'll encounter. So I think it doesn't appeal to Dark Souls fans, but it will appeal to Elden Ring fans. And it's a small distinction perhaps, but I do think it's an important one to make because I do think there will be some interest there.